on a computer, it's always going to be correct, but on a physical chessboard, the bottom right-hand corner needs to be a white square. And ideally, you have a board with coordinates. You see A1, B1, right? A through H and 1 through 8. The A through H kind of coordinates are called the A file, the B file, the C file, the first, second, third, fourth, etc. They're called the rank. You can think of it like a little street address. The bottom right-hand corner, you put the rooks or the castles, then you put the knights or the horses, the bishops go next, and then you have the royalty in the middle. And the way you remember this is that the white queen stands on a white square, and the black queen stands on a dark square. And that's it. I mean, this is how you set the board up. Now, obviously, you need to learn how all the pieces move, which we will do. It's not the most complicated thing in the world. There are 2 bonus, kind of special, unique rules of chess, which I will show you. We'll start with the pawns, because there's 8 of them. They're worth 1 point when they're captured. Pawns have a unique skill set. So on their first move, they can move 1 square or 2 forward. So either this, or for example this. However, after they've already moved 1 time, they can only move forward 1 square. They capture things by moving diagonally 1 square. So that would be how a pawn would capture another piece or another pawn. The other thing about pawns, they have kind of 2 hidden secrets. If a pawn makes it all the way to the end of the board, you can promote it to either a queen, a rook, a bishop, or a knight. That happens a lot later in the game, unless, I don't know, somehow you just let the pawn go the entire distance. That normally can't happen. And the last thing is a little rule of chess called en passant, which is when a pawn can capture an enemy pawn by not physically capturing it. You say, Levy, I want a refund. All right, I didn't pay this money to learn that. Now, what? Watch. If your pawn is standing 1 rank past the middle of the board, right? Because this is your middle. Your pawn is standing 1 rank past the middle. And an enemy pawn goes 2 squares, and stands side by side with your pawn like this. For this move, and this move only, you can take the square behind that pawn. That is called en passant. It's called taking the pawn in passing, and the pawn disappears. If you wait 1 move, you cannot do that anymore. Only for this move can you take that pawn en passant. Listen, hang with me. It's very unlikely these opportunities happen in games, and you don't have to take, right? You don't have to capture if the opportunity presents itself. But it is my responsibility to tell you all the rules of the game. Pawns have a unique skill set. We back all the way up and go to, let's say, the knights next. The knights are worth 3 points, and they move in a very unique way. They move in little baby L shapes. That means up 2 and over 1, or 2 to the one side and then up 1. So for example, this knight can go up 2 and over 1, and the knights can jump over pieces. So the knight can just go like that, for example. The enemy knight would go here. Then the knight would go here, because that would be 2 and 1. That would be 2 and 1, and 2 and 1, and 2 and 1, and so on. Bishops are also worth 3, although there is some debate. Like, some people think they're 3.5, but just consider them equal with knights for now. Bishops move diagonally on their own color, so that would look something like this, and the bishop can come out here, and now has this kind of vision. Okay, now of course you can't capture your own pieces, so you cannot go there, but you can go on the empty squares. Okay, so far so good. Rooks. I'm gonna do some weird stuff here just to kind of show you how rooks move. I'm gonna put the rook in the center of the board. This is not actually how games begin, but hang with me. Rooks move left, right, up, and down. Okay, they're worth 5 points. They come out a lot later in the game because they start in the corners. You need to develop most of your pieces before the rooks get into the game. Preferably don't play like this, because a rook is worth 5 points, so you see, it's not going to go crashing through the enemy pawns. That just doesn't make any sense. They're only worth 1. And last but not least, your queen. And again, just to show you the power of the queen can go left, right, up, down, and diagonal in any direction it wants. That is why the queen is worth 9 points. Now, it combines the power of a rook and a bishop, which is 5 plus 3, but for some reason it gets a bonus point. I don't know, maybe it has a nice fancy hat that the other pieces don't have. But that's basically it, and the queen is 9, and obviously it's the most powerful piece. It's a game changer if you get it involved in the right way, but don't get it involved early because a queen cannot possibly do damage to a fully reinforced position, right? So, now, there is one more bonus rule of chess, and it has to do with the king. The king can move on its own in any direction 1 square. The king has no value because the king cannot be captured. The way you win a game of chess is surrounding the king, and the king cannot escape from danger, okay? We will learn about that in literally the very next chapter, where we cover piece interactions, check and checkmate, and these kinds of things. So, the bonus rule of a king is there is a move in chess called castling, which involves the king and the rook. Now, what that looks like is something like this. Once the king and the rook see each other, okay, they see each other, you've removed the knight and the bishop, or on the other side of the board, the knight, the bishop, and the queen, you've removed them, and the king and rook can see each other. That would be long castling, and this would be short castling. Now, you can do something called castling, which is when the king goes 2 squares, and the rook hops over and stands right next to the king. If you're playing on a physical board, you literally slide the king over and put the rook next to the king. But online, you just slide the king either to the square or even hover it over the rook. This is only allowed if the king and the rook have not moved yet, either or. If the king has moved, the king can't castle. If the rook has moved, you can't castle to that side. You could still use the other rook. And the king cannot castle out of danger or through danger. So what does that look like? Well, if the king is under attack via a check, you can't castle out of danger. That's just the rule. And last but not least, the one that's a little bit harder to understand sometimes, just going to show you here. You see how the bishop from a long distance controls that square? You can't castle, because you would be moving your king through danger. So you cannot castle through check. When you play online, these things happen for you. The machine does not let you do that. It doesn't let you put yourself in danger. Over the board, it's harder. People forget all the time. People castle the wrong way. They castle when they've already moved the king and rook. So just be vigilant. Some people castle the queen. The queen cannot be castled, but they do it anyway. This is it. These are the absolute basics. In the next chapter, if you're a beginner, you should 100% look at the next chapter, because it will teach you to understand the dynamic of all the pieces, how they all interact, the empty squares and the physical pieces and the presence of them. And that's basically it. But I included this chapter because it would be useful for brand new players and players who are just new to the game in general. All right, let's keep it rolling.